and welcome back to Get Around to It, the culture podcast for curious people, presented by me, Aoife Barry.
And me, Lauren Murphy. We are so delighted to be back after a lengthy break and to be here in the lovely studios in the East Quad at TU Dublin, ready to chat about what we got around to in culture lately and what we're looking forward to getting around to over the next few weeks.
Indeed we are, and long-time listeners of Get Around to It will remember how we are two journalists and friends who love chatting about everything we got around to in arts and culture. Back in COVID times, am I allowed to mention them, Lauren?
Yes, you are.
Back in COVID times, we had a podcast also called Get Around to It, and now we're back bigger, hopefully better, and still loving chatting about books, films, TV, music, art, theatre, the whole shebang. But this time around, we're going to be doing something special. We're going to be bringing you our reviews and our previews, which you might be used to if you listen to our old podcast, but a whole heap besides that. So you can expect interviews, deep dives into cultural topics every second week, discussions about burning issues, and generally a look at what's happening in arts and culture across the island of Ireland.
We sure will, and we'll update you on the art scene and bring you reviews, previews and interviews. And as Aoife said, every second week we'll do that deep dive into a certain topic, whether it's a hidden gem or what you need to know about a classic cultural moment. This week we'll be chatting about everything from a new mockumentary series, The Paper, to albums by New Dad and former Talking Heads frontman David Byrne, as well as previewing some exciting new theatre on the horizon and an intriguing new film starring the legendary Brenda Fricker. But before we kick things off, let's tell you a little bit about each other. I'm going to go first.
Okay, save us the mortification of talking about ourselves, right?
I'm going to let you know about my lovely co-host Aoife, who is a freelance arts journalist and broadcaster and author of the best-selling non-fiction book Social Capital, which you may have read. It's about the impact of social media on Ireland, which was nominated for an Irish Book Award in 2023, nevertheless.
There you go. She's
also a weekly arts columnist with the Sunday Times and has bylines in the Irish Times, the Irish Independent, the Journal and the Examiner, as well as featuring regularly on RTE and Today FM. And as if that wasn't enough, she also writes essays and fiction and has been published by Ropes Journal, Banshee and broadcast on Sunday Miscellany.
It's very embarrassing hearing somebody reading your CV, but sure, look, it's easier when we do it when we talk about each other. So you will know, if you're familiar with Lauren's work, that she is also a freelance arts and culture journalist. You might have read her work covering music, TV, film, theatre and books. She writes mostly for the Sunday Times. You've definitely seen her features in Culture Magazine, also the Irish Times, the Irish Independent and her RTE column. And she's interviewed everyone from Noel Gallagher to Gabriel Byrne to Enya. Can we please do an episode about some of your interviews, Lauren?
We absolutely will. Stay tuned for that.
Excellent. And I hear that Enya is the person you still get asked about the most. Not surprised. So save all your thoughts on her for a future episode, which may or may not be coming down the tracks. She's also been on the judging panels for the Choice Music Prize a few times, and even the Irish Eurovision jury, which is something we both have in common. And she says that was quite the experience. It really is. Again, yes. That's probably a future Get Around to It episode, I think. You can tell by now we're culture nuts. We're only delighted to be back chatting about all things arts and culture in Ireland and beyond on this bumper jam-packed first episode of Get Around to It. So let's kick off with some arts and culture news. We're going to be chatting about Traitors Ireland and whether it's successful or not, and why the basic income for the arts scheme is such a big deal. There's so much interest in that. But before we get into those two topics, everybody and their granny, because their granny has good taste, has been listening to CMAT's third album, Euro Country. I've been listening to it loads. What about you, Lauren? Are you a big fan of CMAT? How you feel about her at the moment?
I am a big fan of CMAT, and I actually consider myself an OG fan of CMAT.
Me
I was
too.
there in the early days. I bought the t-shirt. I bought the 7-inch vinyls. She's brilliant, isn't she? She's only really got better with time. This is her third album. It came out a few weeks ago now, Euro Country. And it's been a beautiful thing to watch her go from someone who was kind of maybe written off as, by some people, as kind of a pandemic kind of flash in the pan, because she did release her first song around that time. And she's just become this supremely talented artist who's killing it on the world stage at this point. So safe to say we're both big fans of her, and we've thoroughly enjoyed CMAT Summer this summer.
CMAT Summer completely. And what I really love about this is I do think the song, the title track Euro Country, is like the best track she's ever written. It's an absolute banger. And the fact that, you know, she always writes about really unusual things. You know, she writes about the director Peter Bogdanovich in the song with the same name. She's always been really kind of quirky, done her own thing, gotten really into her interests, but she's also bringing more of a political end of things, I think, to Euro Country, talking about Celtic Tiger and the recession. And I think that's really helped bring her, hasn't it, to a whole new level of fandom, and also people like interrogating what she's saying, which is really great. Absolutely.
I think she captures that, you know, sense of Gen Z disillusionment with there's real emotional depth to it, but she's also doing it in a witty way. And, her generation, she's still not even 30.
Oh my God.
She's 29. They still obviously bear the scars of the Celtic Tiger crash, arguably more than anybody else,
Yeah.
But I love that she pokes fun at herself, and she's a great singer as well. She's a great
Amazingly
singer
talented.
as well as a great songwriter. It's not just hollow sentiment for clicks or laughs or a funny kind of meme sort of thing. So yeah, to summarise, I think this album, Eurocountry, is definitely a grower, I will say.
Yes, it is more of a grower, I think, than the last album.
For sure. There's not so many out of the traps bangers to start with, but I think that it really rewards repeated listenings for sure.
It definitely does. And the last thing I'll say in her is that she's not a Nepo baby. And the more we pay attention to culture, the more Nepo babies we see. So I think she's someone who shows like hard graft, hard work and talent. Like it's not just that, like you have to be able to write brilliant songs, and CMAT can. So our done boy and Diana, we salute you. Are you going to any of her gigs?
I'm going to try and get a ticket for she's playing at Tree Arena in December, right?
She's
just announced her biggest Irish gig to date in St. Anne's Park in Raheny for next summer. So they're going to be the hottest tickets of Christmas and next summer.
And I can tell you that I have my ticket for the Cork gig next summer, so I set my mum my head in there, so I can't wait. Now, from CMAT to Traitors Ireland. Lauren, I don't know about you, but I was a massive fan of Traitors UK the last season. I admittedly didn't watch any of the other seasons. I went back and watched some afterwards, but I really fell for this series. And when I heard that Traitors Ireland was being launched, I was really nervous. I was really worried. I thought, will RTE make a good job of it? We've already seen 4 episodes by the time this podcast comes out. We've seen 3 episodes because we're recording just after the third one. Give me your verdict first of all, just kind of thumbs up or thumbs down, and then we get into why.
Thumbs up from me so far. I mean, the overriding emotion is one of relief. I think that it's not terrible.
There is a lot of relief though. Like I am very relieved.
They didn't need to reinvent anything. They had a format that works. It's worked in various territories, including the original Dutch version, which is where it started off in 2021. And obviously it's been hugely successful in the UK. But yeah, if you don't know what the Traitors is, I suppose there might still be people who are living under rocks who've not seen any version. It's essentially a game show, right? A murder mystery game show where the contestants are split into 2 groups. The larger group is the faithful, the smaller ones is the traitors, and the traitors basically need to bump off the faithful one by one without being caught and without revealing their true identity. So it's a simple premise but a very interesting study on human nature, I think. And the host, I suppose, that's what's different about the Irish version as well. Siobhan McSweeney is hosting the Irish one. What do we make of her as a host? I
think she's brilliant as a host. I think the thing about the Irish Traitors, so Traitors Ireland, is it's leaned into its Irishness completely, and that's really the key. So it's being recorded in Slane Castle, which looks great. Siobhan McSweeney is great because her character is kind of leaning slightly camp, very Irish, very kind of authoritarian, and yet kind of the wink and the nod to people too. Her like, I was going to say her costumes effectively as a character, but her outfits, like the fashion is stunning. Also, one of the things about it that's interesting that I didn't notice in the UK one, I don't think they do it in the UK or US, is people curse. They don't blank out any of the cursing, which keeps it so Irish to me.
For sure. I think she's just the right blend of camp and drawl / slightly menacing. I don't think she's trying to do an impression of Claudia Winkleman or do what Claudia Winkleman does on the UK version, which is great to see. I just hope that it manages to sustain the momentum across the series, because there needs to be, a lot of big characters to keep you coming back as a viewer. There needs to be real drama and real backstabbing and some proper treachery, obviously, to keep people coming back. Otherwise, each episode will drag and people will tune out. So I just hope it sustains that momentum. Yeah,
every time I watch the episodes, I am worried that something will happen to make that kind of momentum drag, because so far we've seen that the 3 traitors, so we've got Paddy, Eamon and Caitlin, they're pretty good traitors, not just because some of them are really into being, particularly Eamon and Caitlin, leaning into being quite nefarious and manipulative, but you've also got Paddy who's clearly finding it difficult, and that adds a lot of drama because we have his son as well there, and he can't talk to anybody about his son or being a traitor, which must be so difficult. So I'm really hoping that they do, like you're saying, sustain that level of drama and interest, because you do have 3 episodes a week, so that keeps you watching. But if it starts to dip, attention can really drop quite quickly. But I do think another good thing about it is the production values are very similar to the UK production values. It doesn't feel like RTE have dropped the ball on anything, which is really, really key, I think, to this. So far, like a massive thumbs up for me. I am so relieved the Traitors Ireland actually turned out like way better than I thought it was, and it proves that they can take like a TV format in RT and do a good job with it. But that does cost a lot of money. We know RT are having financial issues ongoing for the last couple of years. Do you think that in the future they're going to be doing more of this? Do you think this could be like a one-off because of the cost?
It feels like a bit of a testing ground, doesn't it? I think if the Traitors goes well, hopefully they will import more of these sorts of game shows or TV shows from other territories that have done well. Because it would be interesting to see Irish versions of other big shows. So
really would.
We'll see what happens. But the big question is, do you think you and I would make good Traitors?
I would like to be a really good traitor, but you know me very well. You know I don't like lying. I'm very diplomatic. So I'm like, maybe actually I'd have the opportunity to be like a really good traitor because I'd give myself the permission to lie and like backstab and manipulate. So I think I'd really enjoy it, but I do think I probably would be terrible and I'd prefer being faithful because I'd just be racked with anxiety every day. And if there's an excuse to worry, I will worry. So I'd be really worried if I was on Traitors. What about you? I feel like you'd be a good traitor.
I don't know if that's a compliment.
No, I mean, you're a nice person. You're not manipulative. But I feel like you'd be able to hold it together.
Yeah,
I think you'd be good at the task at hand, you know.
Firstly, I think you being a traitor, you would actually die of stress. The stress would kill you. You wouldn't be
able. It actually would. Yeah. I get stressed watching the round tables as a viewer. Go on.
I would like to be a traitor because they're the ones who hold the balance of power. Like it tilts in their favour. So I like the idea of having that level of power and not be at their mercy. But you know, maybe they'll do another series and we can apply and find out that way.
We can do the celebrity traitors.
We'll see how well the podcast goes.
Yes, we certainly will.
So staying in the Irish cultural arena, but moving to something a bit different and from a different perspective, I suppose. You want to talk about the basic income for the arts scheme, which has been extended until next year, right? Yeah,
so a couple of weeks ago I wrote a column on the basic income for the arts scheme and I was so blown away with the reaction to it. Like I couldn't believe how many people are still sharing the post about it, which is mad. So if people don't know what that is, basically a few years ago under the previous government, the arts minister brought in this thing called the basic income for the arts scheme. It's a pilot scheme, right? So it's not like an official thing yet. But what happened under it is that 2,000 artists of all genres were picked at complete random to get €350 a week. So this payment would arrive in their bank account. And it's this idea of this basic income for artists saying, okay, if you get over €1,000, like €1,200 or so a month, this can mean that you can pay your rent or your mortgage. It'll take a bit of your financial worry from you and that should hopefully free you up to actually do your work. It's been going really well. They did actually speak to the artists about how they felt about it and the results are really, really positive. The question now is whether or not they actually go forward with that. And there's a real push for the current culture minister, Patrick O'Donovan, who does get criticised over a fair few things, but this, is a real push for him to keep this going, make it permanent. And this really is something that he seems to be very behind, to the point that he actually reshared my column on Instagram.
Wow.
With like some clapping hands and saying, it's like a fair and balanced look at this. It would be such a win for him. I'm sure that's why he is behind it in large part. As, a government minister, you want to look like you're doing something for the people who are affected by your portfolio. And as well, as he pointed out in the Dáil himself, it costs the government around €35 million a year, which, I mean, we're a small country, but like surely that's affordable to a certain extent given the long-term impacts of that. And that also, and I'm going to read a quote that he said in the Dáil, artists in receipt of the support are typically able to devote more time to their art, experience a boost to their well-being through greater life satisfaction and reduced anxiety, and are protected from the precarious nature of incomes in the sector to a greater degree than those not receiving the support. And I think the interest in this, doesn't it really show that artists feel undervalued in Ireland? We do have great things like the Arts Council, which provides a lot of funding to the arts, and I wouldn't even want to think about what it would look like without the Arts Council, right? But on an individual basis, people feel under pressure and they really feel like this, as a kind of an almost universal income style scheme, would really change things for people. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's a great thing. I mean, you and I, we're not technically artists, but we do have aspirations to work and maybe write other things. And it's impossible to do that without financial support. And it's impossible for any artist to do without financial support. So, everybody's talking about this green wave in recent times. That's been this big cultural movement. Irish actors and artists and musicians are doing great things around the world, but they need to have support at ground level, at grassroots level, to do that and be able to be confident enough to put their art art out into the world. So it's about time that the government stepped up and actually gave them the support they need.
It really is. I think the big kind of challenge now is how long is it going to take them to get a proper scheme going, because like that's going to take a huge amount of work. I know people were happy to hear that the BIA scheme, the pilot, was extended until 2026 or into 2026, which is great. The fear obviously is that like it lingers, you know, you kick the can down the road, a new government comes in, a new minister comes in, it gets forgotten about. So there's a real pressure, I think, now, which is why people are sharing, you know, posts about it, why they're talking about their experiences, because people have seen and talked about their actual, you know, lives being impacted. They feel valued. So I think, you know, if Minister Patrick O'Donovan is listening here at Get Around to It, we are very big fans of the basic income for the arts scheme. We'll bring you on this podcast whatever news we get about it, because we're really behind it. We think it would make a tangible difference to people.
Great stuff indeed. So we have some previews coming up, but before we get to them, the Dublin Fringe Festival is coming up from the 6th to the 21st of September, and it's always a really exciting time of year with loads of up and coming artists across theatre, dance, music, comedy, whatever you're having performing in the capital. And we're delighted to feature some of them on this episode and next week's episode, Mike.
Exciting.
First up, here's comedian Michael Fry, who you met up with recently, Aoife.
I did, and he was an absolute delight. So here he is telling us about his upcoming show, which is called Fry Me to the Moon, and taking place at Abbey Theatre. But he's going to start off the clip with his 3 tips for what he got around to lately.
Hello, my name is Michael Fry. I am a comedian and I'm performing at the Dublin Fringe this year. So the 3 things that I've gotten around to: 1, I've started reading again. I think thanks to like social media and Twitter and things like that, like my attention span has been sliced down to like 5% of what it used to be. But what I've done is I've kind of gotten rid of the Twitter app. I've got the Kindle app now on my phone, so when I have a spare moment, I don't read tweets and all the horrible things going on in the world. I start reading books. So I started with I'm doing all the classics that I should have read when I was 15 and beginning from there. So I started with Of Mice and Men, which I really liked. And then recently I read The Catcher in the Rye and I cried. It's unbelievable. And I could see why it's a classic and it's one of those like best books ever written or whatever. The second thing that I've gotten into is 30 Rock. So I'm a big sitcom guy, and it was one of those ones that kind of passed by, and I'd watched Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and I really loved it, and I've been watching kind of like longer things like Mad Men, kind of the prestige TV shows, and I was like, I need something that I can just burn through really quickly. So I'm on season 5 of it. It is one of the best sitcoms ever written. It doesn't really dip, and it's pretty much like, you know, as good as peak Simpsons, I would say. And then the third thing I've gotten around to is kind of pop music. So last summer I got really into Charlie XCX and Sabrina Carpenter and Chapel Roan and things like that. And I realised there's quite a lot of music even by those people that I hadn't listened to before. So recently I've started listening to Lord again, like Addison Rae is very good. Delving back in and being like, okay, was there stuff I missed? Why do people love these artists so much? And like, you know, I don't love all of it. I think there's probably 2 or 3 tracks on like every album where I'm like, I love this, but the rest of it, I don't know. But I'm glad I'm kind of revisiting it anyway. Yeah, my Fringe show, so it's kind of an accumulation of all the stand-up I've done so far. So I've been doing stand-up since 2022, and I came to it from the internet. It was something I never ever wanted to touch or ever do, and now I'm doing it all the time for some reason. But it's kind of a bit aging and stuff like that. So I discovered over the summer that I am the same age as my mother was having me, and you know, you compare your life to how you think it should be, or the kind of people that have gone before us or whatever, and obviously standards are different. We have a housing crisis now where there wasn't necessarily one back in the 90s or whatever, so it's kind of like, where should I be, and the kind of the fallout from that, and thinking about, do I want to have children, do I want to get married, what's wrong with me in lots of different ways. It's a lot of it's about kind of social anxiety as well, and like how actually some of that has affected attaining those goals, as well as like kind of the situation we have ourselves in, but also understanding that like I am a completely different person from my mother, so I shouldn't, you know, hold myself to the same standards. So that's kind of the show in a nutshell. I do music. I have some character comedy in there that I have been doing kind of live in bits for a while, but I kind of just wanted for my first show to be like, here is everything I can do, and trying to find like kind of a theme that scoops it all up together.
And, you know, doing a show like this about something so personal can be kind of tricky, right? Because it's a bit vulnerable, but is it also very helpful? Is it helpful for you to take these things, analyze them, and then make them funny and do that in front of an audience?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the start of the show, I kind of talk about what it's like to be socially anxious and go to a supermarket, and you call out the kind of all the ridiculous things that you do. Or all the things I had been doing for ages and thinking that everybody's looking at me, and like I used to do a thing where, say, I'd go into a lunch place, and if I didn't like what was on the menu, I used to like pretend to take a phone call and leave, as if anybody would care. When you name it and other people laugh at it, and a lot of the time what you see is other people being like, "That's you do that," when you're talking about it. So it is kind of like quite affirming, kind of being like, "Well, I'm not insane," you know, that kind of thing. So it is helpful, even though it is very personal.
That sounds really great, and I love the title alone. That is
So
running,
good.
in case you missed it, from the 9th to the 11th of September in Smock Alley, and tickets are on sale now. Now for the part of the show where we whet your appetite for some exciting culture coming over the next few weeks. First up, New Dad have a new album called Alter that's coming out on 19th September. It's the follow-up to their excellent debut album, Modra, which was released last year. Aoife, are you familiar with these guys?
I am, and I actually spent a bit more time listening to them now because I knew we were going to be talking about them on the show. And just as I felt when I first listened to them, they're such a great band. Like, they're just doing that kind of shoegazy, Curie, kind of vibes, a little bit of Smithy vibes so well. They're a trio. They started when they were really young. I mean, what can we expect with Alter? Because you're a big fan, I believe, of Modra as well.
Yeah, I just think they're a great young band. They're, as Aoife said, they're from Galway. They're based in London now. I was lucky enough to get an advance copy of this album because I recently interviewed Julie Dawson, the front woman. So if you liked their 2024 debut, Modra, you will love this too. It sounds like a real progression for them. Modra was great, but it really sounded in a lot of respects like a band who are kind of still figuring things out. And I think they'd admit that themselves. This one, Alter, is a lot more strident, a lot more confident, a lot more sure of itself. And there's some really interesting themes too. Some of them are written about Julie's kind of journey through the music industry over the last few years, as the band come to terms with basically living their dream, right? They're doing what they always wanted to do. But there's a slog to that as well, obviously. And there's also a song called Rubosh, which was written as her reaction to being basically pigeonholed as the front woman of a band and being expected to behave maybe in a certain way because of her gender.
Wow.
Really interesting themes they're exploring. So yeah, that is called Alter, and it's out on September 19th, and do have a listen when it comes out.
Lovely. I can't wait to listen to that. And yeah, there is that thing, isn't it, of when you get you get to live the dream as a musician. I know Lambrini girls were talking about this recently, that the reality can be really, really tough. So I think it's great to hear more from musicians about that. Now, let's go from music to the screen. Okay, Spinal Tap. Like, we all know it's one of the most iconic music films ever. Mockumentary about a band. Just classic. Amazing, right? But did we need a sequel to it? Because we're getting a sequel to Spinal Tap called Spinal Tap 2 The End Continues, which is going to hit cinemas on the 12th of September. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Do we really need another Spinal Tap film? Because the first one, which was released in 1984, which is crazy, it's one of those films that's become so ingrained in popular culture that, you can't see the word Stonehenge without hearing those opening chords, and you still hear jokes about turning it up to 11 and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's taken a risk to a certain extent for such an iconic film. Do you want to go back and tamper with that formula? But the good news, I suppose, is that the original team are back. It's not a new team trying to update it, I suppose.
Thank God. I mean, you would kind of dread somebody coming in and doing like what do they call them? Like, not a reboot, but there's a certain name that they call those.
Yeah, a remake of sorts.
Yeah, kind of a remake. You just don't want that.
But Rob Reiner, who directed it and played Marty DeBurgy, the documentarian in the original, is back as Marty DeBurgy. And cast members Christopher Guest, Harry Shearer and Michael McKean are also returning, and they've co-written the script with Rob Reiner as well. So do you know anything about the plot?
Yeah, so all I do know is that it returns to like you're saying, the original members. It follows them at this age where they are now. I think they're probably all in their 70s now. They haven't played together, I think, for about 15 years. It's set 40 years after the original film. And in the kind of intervening years, they've left the music industry proper, you could say. One of them's working in a cheese shop. One is playing electric guitar in a folk band. Very, very Spinal Tap joke there. And they go and they basically get back together. They reform for a one-off gig. That's kind of all you can tell from the trailer. It actually does look pretty fresh joke-wise, while also leaning into this idea of these kind of like, washed up rockers trying to make it again. And I love Rob Reiner as well. I mean, like, the amount of films that he's been involved in that I love, like Princess Bride, and he's like a great actor. So I'm not a massive fan of sequels like this in general, so I'm going to trepidatiously approach this. But the trailer doesn't look terrible. Is that the biggest praise we can give it?
I think so. It remains to be seen how good it is, but it is out in cinemas this Friday, September 12th, so we shall see.
Great. Now, before we move on to our reviews and an interview as well, very quickly we wanted to mention 2 Irish films that are going to be hitting cinemas or are in cinemas. So, Lauren, you wanted to mention The Swallow. When is that in cinemas?
It's out on September 19th. Yeah, it's another gorgeous, unusual Irish film to look out for if you like thoughtful, meditative filmmaking. I was lucky enough to see it again a few years ago, actually, because I interviewed
cool.
Brenda Fricker, who plays kind of the sole character in this film. It's directed by Tyg O'Sullivan. And also, as a brief aside, Brenda Fricker's memoir is actually out this month as well. It's published on September 18th. So
I have a sneaky copy of it. So maybe I'll talk about it on the next episode when we're chatting about books.
Amazing. She's she's one of my favourite interviewees, and she's such an intriguing character. But basically in The Swallow, she plays this woman who lives a very solitary life. She's kind of writing a letter to an unknown recipient, and the narrative is told, I suppose, largely over voiceover. So it's not your average narrative film. She's kind of considering her life, her art, loss, love, everything like that, and beautifully shot in County Clare as well. So if you're into something that's a bit slower and more thought-provoking, it's definitely worth a cinema visit.
That sounds great. And just to add, when I say a sneaky copy, I don't mean I stole a copy out of the production line. I got a proof copy of Brenda Fricker's memoir, and I did have a little bit of a read of it, and it's really beautifully written. She goes back a lot into her kind of family history, and there's a lot to it. Some very sad moments in it as well too. I'm just going to briefly mention a film that should still be in cinemas. It is directed by Gar O'Rourke. It's called Sanatorium. It's set in a crumbling Soviet-era sanatorium in Odessa in Ukraine, and it is a documentary. It's set post-invasion by Russia. We know, of course, that invasion is still ongoing, unfortunately, in Ukraine. So this film is very timely with lots of very interesting layers to it about how people survive, at a time of invasion or a time of war. And the big thing about this is it's Ireland's official selection for the Oscars 2026. Now, this doesn't mean that it's automatically going to get an Oscar nomination. There's sometimes a bit of a misunderstanding about that. What it basically means is that it's Ireland's official selection, so it could be in with a chance of being nominated for the Best International Feature category. It's kind of in there in the long list, and then the shortlist will be chosen from that. We'll find out in, I think, December whether or not it actually made those nominations, but it should be in cinemas now. It's called Sanatorium.
Excellent. And finally, any books that we should keep an eye out for over the next while, apart from Brenda Fricker's?
I would definitely suggest people keep an eye out for Waking the Feminists and the Movement That Changed Irish Theatre by Sarah Durkin and Leon Bell. It's going to be launched in October in time for the 10-year anniversary of Waking the Feminists. Can you believe it's 10 years since Waking the Feminists happened? I mean, I actually can't believe it. But you can pre-order it now. Pre-orders mean a lot to authors. It's published by UCD Press. This is basically the story of the Waking the Feminist movement. Very briefly, it began with a hashtag on Twitter after the announcement of the Abbey Theatre's 2016 Waking the Nation programme, which was heavily male-dominated. The artists Leon Bell and the writers Belinda McKeown and Gavin Costick started that conversation. It spread to almost every member of the arts in Ireland. They had a big, huge meeting at the Abbey. I was actually at that. I still have my badge from it. I was reporting on it from the Journal. And it was a really powerful moment, and it really was a reckoning with this idea of the role that women play in theatre and the arts, whether or not women are recognised or not, why in 2016 we were still having these sort of events, national centenary events where women were basically not on the agenda. So yeah, I can't wait to read this book and to find out more, because I think this is essential reading if you're into the arts in Ireland and you want to know why certain things haven't happened over the last decade. Waking the Feminists, the book, will tell you all about it.
Now it's time for our second interview of this episode, which is my Chawa actor Frank Blake, who is starring in The Boy, which is Marina Carr's adaptation of the Greek Theban trilogy, in which he plays Oedipus opposite the amazing Eileen Walsh. You'll probably know Frank from his plentiful TV work too. He's been excellent in series like Normal People, Blue Lights, which I know you're a fan of.
Big fan, yeah.
And Say Nothing as well. So I met him recently at the Abbey Theatre where the play is on to discuss what he got around to recently, as well as hearing about his role in The Boy. And here's what happened.
My name is Frank Blake, and 3 things I've gotten around to recently are The Last Waltz, the concert film, Luke Murphy's dance show Scorched Earth, and Slow Horses.
In terms of The Last Waltz, are you a big music fan, a big Dylan fan?
I'm a big music fan. Yeah, big Dylan fan. All of that kind of that generation, I suppose, but they span generations. Those guys. I hadn't seen The Last Waltz. I'd kind of heard of it, and I wasn't even that aware of the band.
Yeah.
And it was out in the cinemas recently. I saw it in my local cinema in London, and I could not believe what I was. Have you seen it?
I have seen it, not in a long time now. I
Yeah.
must probably do a rewatch.
The opening credits go, and then they have a big title saying this movie should be played loud.
Yeah,
And
well, seeing in a cinema is the perfect.
It
place
certainly
for it.
was, and it was a real dingy cinema as well. It's like it's kind of crumbling, it's falling down, very much like Winterland, I think is where they play it, the gig. It was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I kept applauding at the end of the songs and realising I wasn't there. And the guests they have, Neil Young and Van Morrison and Dylan and Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell, yeah.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
And I've become a huge fan of the band since then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Obsessed.
Excellent. And Luke Murphy's Score Shirt, which was at Galway recently,
Yes,
right?
I was lucky enough to catch it just at the weekend there in Galway during the Arts Festival. And I've seen some of Luke's shows before, and I've always loved his stuff. And yeah, it was amazing. It was kind of inspired by The Field by John B. Keane.
Yeah.
And sort of about land disputes and land dispute based violence and all of that, which is prevalent in Ireland and the world over. And it was just the technical feat, the physical feat of it all, and also brilliant acting in there as well.
Okay.
It's a very accessible dance show. I was talking to him afterwards, and he said it's almost about like tricking people into seeing a dance show. And it was amazing. I hope it might happen again. I'd definitely go see it again, and I wouldn't say that lightly. So if it happens again, go see that for sure.
Excellent. That's Luke Murphy's Score Shirt. And your final choice was Slow Horses, which who doesn't love slow horses?
Who doesn't love slow horses? Yeah, I was slow to slow horses for sure, but oh my God, it's so good. It's so unique. It's just got its own tone, which is it's just so unique to that show. And Gary Oldman is amazing. He's disgusting in it.
Jackson Lamb.
He's such a greaseball in it. And Jack Loudon as well. I think he's so good in it. He's so funny, but also kind of carrying the weight of the world in it, which is great. And all the cast they get in, like their guest stars for each season, are like true greats, and I can't wait for more of it. Yeah,
I could see you in Slow Horses for sure. Is
yeah,
that an ambition?
I'd love to. If Jack Loudon needs a brother or something, people say I look a bit like him.
There you go.
I don't
It's
know.
a change from Kenneth Branagh, maybe.
Yeah, hey, I'll take either.
And finally, can you tell us a little bit about The Boy? And you're obviously in Marina Carr's new adaptation of the Theban trilogy, and you play Oedipus. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we're just in rehearsals at the moment, which are going well, thank God. And it's Marina's kind of reimagining of the Theban plays. There's which there's three: Oedipus Rex, Oedipus Colonus, and Antigone. And Marina has sort of streamlined them into two parts, which you can come see either on two separate days or on two show days. You can buy two show day tickets on Wednesdays and Saturdays, which is probably the best way to see it because you're really immersed in the whole thing, and you go on that whole journey, which is crazy when I read the script and see where it starts, and then when we finish, we're like, oh my God. So yeah, it's very sort of visceral Irish adaptation, which I think will really speak to audiences at the Abbey, yeah.
Great stuff. Big fans of Frank Blake here. I'm really interested to see that play The Boy by Marina Carr. It's going to be running in the Abbey Theatre from the 15th of September to the 1st of November. I've seen the last few Marina Carr plays in the Abbey, and sometimes I don't quite get it and sometimes I'm like mad into it. So I always find that like she's operating on a level that I can't quite intellectually get to sometimes, which is, you know, really interesting, I think, as an audience member. So I'm very intrigued about this.
I think we actually saw her last play together, Audrey or Sorrow,
We
in
did.
the Abbey, which is bonkers.
I enjoyed that a lot.
In a really good, intriguing way. I think with this one, the fact that it's adapted from a Greek myth is a little off-putting to some people, but I think when she's spun it in her own inimitable way, it'll be something a lot more palatable.
The fact that we recognise names like Oedipus, even if you never studied Greek theatre, you'll recognise those names and understand kind of what comes with them, the deep dark myths that come with them. I think that'll really help with any audience members who might not know a huge amount about this area. So let's go to our review section of the pod. First up, the cozy crime phenomenon, the Thursday Murder Club, which is on Netflix now. I was really looking forward to the Thursday Murder Club because I do love, you know, an Agatha Christie film. I do love a kind of a crime. I wouldn't say I'm the world's biggest cozy crime fan.
I didn't even know cozy crime was a thing. Is that an actual genre?
It is. Cozy crime is a genre, and it's this, you know, Richard Osman is spearheading it essentially.
Okay.
He got paid got a 6-7 figure deal for his first 2 books, so there was a lot of hope in Richard Osman in writing Thursday Murder Club, and it paid off because he is an absolute bestseller. He's also got a really interesting career. Was involved at Endemol, a creative director at Endemol. They're the company that were behind like Big Brother and things like that. And if anybody's listened to the podcast that he does at Marina Hyde, The Rest is Entertainment, he's very, very knowledgeable. Seems like a really personal guy. Not surprised he went for cozy crime because he's quite a diplomatic presenter on podcasts. So in this, you have a really good director of this adaptation of that book, Chris Columbus. You've got a great cast: Helen Mirren, Ben Kingsley, Pierce Brosnan. You've got this idea of quote unquote old age pensioners in a quote unquote kind of home for the elderly. We can get into whether or not those are correct terms in a minute. And they form a club, the Thursday Murder Club, where they solve crimes essentially, and their jobs is trying to figure out exactly what happened, and then they get faced with a real life crime. I was very much looking forward to this, but it fell quite flat for me on a number of fronts, and I say that with regret because I really liked, you know, the director and the cast. But for starters, I felt like the stakes weren't high enough, and that some strange things happened in it, like how they got involved with the police investigation, that didn't quite make sense in the film. That disrupted things for me. I was watching and thinking, how were they allowed to get involved in this, and why are members of the police giving them this sort of information? That just didn't quite work for me, even though maybe on the page it might make a bit more sense to readers. I think you can get away with that sort of stuff. How did you feel about Thursday Murder Club?
Oh boy, where to start with this one?
Oh God.
It would probably be along similar lines to yours. I have to preface this by being completely honest and saying I didn't really like the book. I thought it was, you know, riddled with cliches. You know, I think Richard Osman's great, like you said. He seems like a really personable guy. He's great on telly. I love a good page turner if it's well written, but I just found it really cliche ridden. But that hasn't stopped multiple sequels. Like you said, he got a huge deal for the first 2 books. There's been 5 books. Mm-hmm. The 5th one is due for publication soon, I think. But I thought this book would transfer really well to, for all its flaws, I'd transfer really well to the telly or film. So I went into it with an open mind, ready to be won over. Thought it might at least make for a fluffy sort of entertaining watch. But yeah, I get what you're saying about the fact that, you know, there's so much that doesn't make sense, and you can suspend disbelief to a certain extent because it's a film. It's a fictional film. They aren't really pensioners solving murders.
What? I mean, sorry, it was a documentary.
Sorry to disappoint you, but there still has to be some sort of rooted in reality.
Yeah.
You know, like there has to be some sort of grounding that you can be swept along in it and go, okay, well, I let that go. But there's so many little inconsistencies that don't make sense. Mm-hmm. And also the cast. I mean, Pierce Brosnan is, like, I love him.
We all love him.
Herald the Brosnan-naissance, whatever it's called, Brosnaissance. Bring it on. He's great, but he's totally miscast for this. He's meant to play the former union leader. I don't know if I'd trust him to argue in a debate, a school debate, never mind for union rights. But that's, again, one of the problems with this. Ben Kingsley is in it as well. The Oscar-winning Ben Kingsley, one of the greatest actors of his generation. Yeah. He has so little to do. Helen Mirren, basically nothing to do. The character's also one-dimensional. That was one of the biggest things for me.
Yeah, it's weird. Ben Kingsley's character is... He just kind of lingers in the background a lot, and you feel like he could be brought out a bit more. And I think that as well, justice for Jonathan Pryce. Poor Jonathan Pryce.
I know.
Who in Slow Horses plays a very similar character who also has dementia. Really important to have these kind of characters represented on screen. But it feels like he's kind of left to linger a lot in this, even though he ends up being quite an important character in the end. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I just felt like he was a little bit wasted in it too. And I know you and I talked about this off the pod, the fact that the characters live in a ginormous, huge, big, massive castle and clearly have loads of money, it kind of reduces the stakes. And again, that can be cozy on the page, I think, because you kind of want to get into their little fancy world, but on screen it loses the sense of like peril or that they are a group of people in society that are on the margins in any way, which I think has to be kind of key with this. They're very privileged people, and I think that doesn't quite work. So it was a disappointing watch for me.
Yeah, and you could argue, like, you know, it's not necessarily for our demographic. It feels like they're maybe going for that best exotic marigold hotel crowd.
True, and that also wasn't for us.
But the thing is that, you know, great filmmaking should transcend demographics and hold an appeal for everybody, and this just doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, you could throw this on a Sunday afternoon, but even at that, you might not find it as cozy as you want it to be. Now, from the Thursday Murder Club, onto a brand new show that we have both seen previews of, and that launched on Friday. So it's already out by the time you listen to this as well. It is The Paper, and this is a mockumentary. We keep talking about mockumentaries on our first show. This is a mockumentary starring our very own Donald Gleeson. It is from the universe of The Office, from the makers of The Office. It's set in a newspaper called the Toledo Truth Teller in Ohio, and Donald Gleeson plays Ned Sampson, who is the new editor of that Toledo Truth Teller. What did you think of this?
I went into this with high hopes. I have to admit, again, I'm making a lot of admissions in this episode, but I didn't watch the US Office. I didn't get into the US Office. It's not my sort of thing. It's not my sort of humour. I loved the original UK Office. Yeah, absolutely loved it. Just never got into the US Office. This is, again, as you said, very much in that same sphere of humour. Donald Gleeson plays, again, this young, idealistic man, kind of naive in a lot of ways, who's drafted in as this editor to save an ailing newspaper. I think the link to The Office is actually to its detriment. I know there are some people who absolutely love that series, but I never really got into it. But if you liked it and you liked the likes of Parks and Recreation, which director and co-writer Greg Daniels also created, you might like The Paper. But there was a lot that just didn't work for me.
I think I feel a lot nicer towards The Paper than you, but at the same time, I do think it's a slow burn, and even at that, it doesn't quite catch fire. Do you know what I mean? I did find myself thinking about it though a lot afterwards, which is usually a sign for me that there's something there that I quite liked, but it takes a while to kind of warm up, doesn't it? You know, one thing I did like about it that was actually also terrifying was how it does get to the nub of the kind of media crisis, particularly in the US, and this idea that, you know, small newspapers are under threat. And as two journalists, we certainly feel that sense of like, if there's peril in the media world, it affects people like us. And I know for all the time I've been working in journalism, that there's always been the sense of like, it's under threat, newspapers are under threat, how are we going to keep on going? So I think it does get to that, even though it does it very heavy-handedly through a very heavy-handed metaphor, which lasts through the whole of the first episode. And yet it's not wrong about some of that. So I thought that was quite, you know, it was decently done. What I would have liked to have seen, though, was a bit more shades of grey or even dark with Donald Gleeson's character. I really liked him. I thought he was actually the best thing in the show. But in episode 1 or maybe 2, I think maybe episode 1, there's a scene in his office when he first gets the role where he shows his darker side to Ned Sampson, because we have established up to that point Ned Sampson's a bit of a sap, and all of a sudden he gets a bit of power and he kind of hangs on to it for a minute, and I felt that he kind of lets that kind of, you know, dribble away after a certain extent. And I wanted him to stick to that, having that layer of maybe he's a little bit of a nefarious guy underneath it all. So I kind of wish there was a bit more of that in it. I like Sabrina Impacciatore. She's from White Lotus, but I do maybe think they leaned a little bit too hard into caricature with her at times. Yeah. So I'd love, like, maybe this needs a second season. Maybe this is, we've talked about this ourselves and we will talk about it in the future on the pod. Maybe this is the kind of season that it needs the first one to establish the characters and the roles and get the world established, and actually will kind of free itself up for a second season and might actually be a lot better.
Maybe, like if it's seems to me it's very clear that the writers were following the formula that is used in both the UK and the US office to a certain extent. So if they manage to break free of that and kind of take their own path, it might get better. But it is formulaic. I mean, there's this kind of simmering romance between Donald Gleason's character Ned and a budding writer on the paper, Mare. And it just feels like another version of Jim and Pam or Tim and Dawn from the UK office. It just, there was an opportunity to do something different here, whether it was with his character or her character. And, like you said, we ourselves have discussed writing a sitcom about the Irish freelance journalism world and how
spoiler
chaotic, depressing and inadvertently hilarious it could be. And instead it feels like the writers just went for the most obvious choices and it just didn't work. Why not let Donald be Irish? That would have made it all the more interesting.
It would have been so good. And why not make him more like David Brent? Do you know, like David Brent is terrible. He's an awful person, and yet there's a modicum of sympathy towards him because he's so awful. Whereas I think the American series, which like you, I didn't quite get into at all, there's a sense that like they're just really dislikable or just sappy and a bit of like a wet blanket, and you're like, okay, am I supposed to care about this person? Donald Gleason has all these layers to him. He can do slightly evil quite well.
Yes.
He can do little puppy dog, hangdog kind of guy really well too. So he'd be a really great guy to have, to lean more into that evil side. If this was set in a newspaper in the UK or Ireland, it would be a radically different show, and it would be grittier and it would be more embarrassing and mortifying, and they need more embarrassment and mortification. That's not the American style of mortification that they have in those mockumentaries, where we just feel a bit like cringe as opposed to the proper dark David Brent, what in God's name are you doing with your life? Mortification.
Exactly, but the biggest problem I had with this is that it simply did not make me laugh. I don't think I laughed once. So there you have it.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't have the laugh a minute vibe of the UK office, even though, I mean, it's in the universe, it's not the same show. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that we've got better coming. But yeah, that's all we can say on that one for now. So let's go from the small screen to music. And you, Lauren, have been listening to a preview of the new David Byrne album. He made this one with a musical ensemble called Ghost Train Orchestra, and it's called Who is the Sky?
A very vague sort of existential title if you're ever having one. David Byrne is obviously and forever will be known probably as former frontman of Talking Heads, but of course he's had a hugely successful and extensive solo career and has collaborated with all sorts of unusual and unexpected musicians and bands over the years, from Fatboy Slim to St. Vincent and beyond. And yes, this is his 9th solo album. As you said, it's a collaboration with a New York jazz ensemble called Ghost Train Orchestra. It might sound like it's all quite a bit left field, but this album was produced by Kid Harpoon, who has worked with the likes of Harry Styles and Miley Cyrus and Lizzo and Shawn Mendes. So a curious meeting of minds for sure. It comes also in the wake of 2018's American Utopia, his last album, which was huge and spawned a monster in that it became a Broadway musical and had its own HBO special directed by Spike Lee. So yeah, I really like this album.
Great.
I really liked it. Yeah, there's lots going on, but it's not in a really over-the-top, heavy-handed way. It's stitched together really nicely, and it's so groovy.
Oh, cool.
I really found it really groovy. It's lots of quirky pop, but in a way that's befitting a man of David Byrne's status. Like, he's not trying to compete with Harry Styles or other contemporary pop artists and create these earworms that'll be played on radio. Instead, I think you kind of feel the weight of his decades of experience and the subtle flourishes here and there and lots of great ideas. He still comes up with these great ideas for songs. Now, I have to say that when I heard that he was making an album with a jazz ensemble, I expected something completely different, but they really enhanced these songs in a gorgeous way. There's mariachi horns on a song called What Is the Reason for It? There's strings on Don't Be Like That. There's 70s style brass on I'm an Outsider. And there's humour too. The thing I liked about it, that he's still having a bit of fun. There's a song called Moisturizing Thing, which is basically about people judging you on the way you look. And it ends with the line, life isn't easy when you look like you're 3.
Aww.
So that sums it up. Overall, I really liked it, and I've gone back to it quite a bit, and I think I will return to it over the next while as well.
That is great. David Byrne, such an icon, such a massive musical influence on so many of us, I think, of our generation. And, you know, one of the creators alongside Talking Heads of some of the best pop songs and experimental songs of all time. So I'm looking forward to listening to that one. Well, God, I feel like I have to take a big exhale. That has been a very jam-packed first episode of Get Around to It.
It has been. And to round it off, we're not finished yet, Aoife.
What?
We have another exciting interview, this time with the wonderful Alison Spittle, whose show Big will have its Irish debut at the Dublin Fringe Festival from 16th to the 20th of September at the Project Arts Centre. And you caught up with her recently, right?
I did. It was really great to catch her and to chat to her about her show Big. People might have heard a lot of her interviews that she did about Big and about its kind of backstory about having a health crisis and taking a GLP-1 medications and the impact that had on her life. And she's been really good on kind of teasing out all of the issues around that and her thoughts about it and emotions. So we chatted a bit about that in this clip. At the start, though, she tells us what she got around to lately. So it was really great to chat to Alison. And like you say, her show is going to be on the Project Arts Centre from the 17th to 20th of September. So we're really looking forward to catching her there. Here's Alison Spittle and Get Around to It.
Hello, my name is Alison Spittle, and the 3 things that I've been getting around to doing lately have been, I've been reading a book by Anthony Kavanagh called Pop Scars, which is really good. I listened to an audiobook by Crystal Evans called The Hottest Girl in Burn Camp, and I've been watching some stand-up comedy by an amazing comedian called Grace Mulvey, and the show is called Didn't You Know We're All Going to Die? So Pop Scars by Anthony Kavanagh. Anthony Kavanagh was more well known by the name Kavanagh in the late 90s. He is a working class pop star who didn't quite make it. He was kind of really big in Singapore, but no real big hits over here. And his story is amazing. So basically, he bought a house for his family from a council estate, and he had to give back that house. Because he lost all his money. He's really, really witty. You'd love to meet him at a house party, although he's sober now, so it wouldn't be a house party. But it's an amazing story about like addiction, about hopes and dreams. He seems like an amazing person and really witty. There's a great anecdote, 2 great anecdotes actually. One is about Jerry Halliwell from the Spice Girls, and the other one is about Victoria Beckham from the Spice Girls as well. So if that tickles your brain, go for it. Oh, the second one, so this is Crystal Evans. She's an amazing stand-up comedian based in Scotland, originally from America. I keep thinking that she's Canadian because she's so sound, but she is American. She's from Seattle. This is a book that she wrote this year. It's an amazing book about, basically, she was involved in a house fire when she was a teenager, and her sister was killed in the house fire. And it's about being brought up by a mother who is very, very difficult, and how I'm just amazed that she's really, really funny, and there's some really, really profound bits. There's one bit I keep remembering, and it's about how, if you grow up with a traumatic childhood, it's hard to speak to people who haven't grown up with a traumatic childhood, but it really hit me, and I think she's amazing. Grace Mulvey, she's a stand-up comedian from Dublin. She's based in London at the moment, and I have been doing some previews with her, so we share an audience, and her show, I think she's just one of the best comedians to come out of Ireland non-stop, and she's getting big on TikTok now. Like, I just think she's incredible. And some of her jokes are just incredible. I have to stop saying incredible and stop saying amazing. But she's wonderful. She's a wonderful, wonderful comedian.
And tell us about your show. Your show Big is coming to the Dublin Fringe Festival.
Yes,
very exciting.
is.
Tell us more.
I think it's from the 17th of this September till the 21st, and it's basically it's about how I got ill and had to make some changes, and I am very kind of torn about it. It's because I've lost weight, and I'm finding it. I think the best thing about losing weight is that I'm able to catch buses quicker, like I am. Before, when I was fatter, I treated buses like manifestations. I was like, if it's there, it's there. I'm not running after it. But the worst thing about losing weight is that people treat me nicer. And that's what the show is about.
It sounds like it's a very vulnerable show.
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about that? Because when you're a comedian, you're there to make people laugh, but you're also going to be making people feel really deep feelings. You know, are you excited about it? Are you feeling scared about it? How do you feel about that?
I feel excited about it. I'm annoyed that I'm compelled to talk about stuff that makes me feel vulnerable. Like, I wish I could do one-liners and observations on crisps and stuff. Not to say that that's like less valid, because they're all valid. I just don't have the brain power to come up with good one-liners, so I just have to recall trauma. And yeah, it's grand.
And then finally, I mean, do you feel this is like a new level for you as a comedian? I mean, you've been in the industry for a long time, and also, you know, growing as a person too. You know what I mean? We learn things as you go through life. It sounds like you've had a really kind of tough year. Do you feel this is, you know, for you a different level of your comedy?
I think so. I think moving to England really did help with my comedy, and I hate to say that because I'd love to live in Dublin. Like, we are standing here in a hotel that was built when I moved out of this area because I got priced out of it. So it's interesting to see the inside of it. Lovely, lovely place. But I'm just so ex-Catholic. It's so hard to even talk about stuff in a positive way. But I've been doing comedy a while. I do think I'm a better comedian than I was 10 years ago. I should be. And yeah, I'm hoping I do as good a show as it deserves to be, because there's no point laying out all this personal stuff on the line if the jokes aren't good.
That is all for us on Get Around to It for this very first episode. If you enjoyed what you heard, please don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Get Around to It Pod. And of course, like, share and review this podcast, please, because that really helps us get the word out there.
Please do spread the word with any of your pals who are also curious culture fans. And if you are an art maker or culture creator, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a mail at getaroundtoitpod@gmail.com.
Please do. And thanks again for listening. And huge thanks to TU Dublin for the use of this gorgeous studio space.
Catch us next Monday on Get Around to It with one of our deep dive episodes. We'll be back on the Monday after that with more of our previews and reviews. And a huge thanks to Landlovers who gave us our wonderful theme music, Cinema Bell. You'll find it on their album, Confidence. And we'll see you next time.
For anyone else, they would have stayed.